Good morning, it's Devorah. It's InStory Live, Misty Forest Edition. You can see there's a particular beauty in the forest when it's foggy. And I was thinking how this fog in the city, it's a problem. It hides things, it blocks things from view. Hi, Kay. But here in the forest, hi, Trish. Happy birthday. Facebook told me it was your birthday. And you're up in the middle of the night for it. It's so fun to see you. Hi, Janice. So, see this, Kay made a comment about the forest beauty being like a mystical, like a beginning of a journey, and it made me think about how the fog in one place that is an obstruction and hides the way, in another reality reveals a mystery, allows you to open to the mystery. There's something about seeing the fog in the forest that I don't know. It's a particular kind of magical, mysterious beauty all of its own, and but here's what I want to talk about this morning. What story are you living your life by? So I want you to think about that. By what story are you living your life? Like, what story guides your life? Now, there's a few different ways to answer this. You can answer it by the story that you tell yourself and about your life experience. But there's another area, because I've been thinking about this. I had a whole kind of epiphany and writing over the weekend that I'll say more about eventually. But so based on what story do you decide what's good, what's bad, what's uplifting, what's meaningful, what to do next? So most of us, we listen to each other. Like, here you are listening to me, and then I listen to somebody else. So for me, of course, one of the foundations of the story by which I live my life is my Jewish story. So I often listen to Jewish speakers who have unpacked some kind of wisdom and shift my thinking, expand my consciousness. But then sometimes I'll listen to Brene Brown or Simon Sinek, who are two speakers who I find really inspiring in their thinking. And so what I want to say is that what we're doing is we're hearing these people's stories, and they're often their interpretation of some kind of story that's happening in the world. And if we respect them and value them, then we can make part of our story that we live move up or expand or shift based on the story that somebody else is telling. So think about it. So right now we're in the middle of recording for the fall InStory show about it's finally your turn, come out of hiding and dare to be seen. And so think about it. What difference does it make? Why do I think it's so important for women to be telling their stories? So I want you to think about it. What difference does it make? Why is it so important that we hear each other's stories? And so think about, when have you heard someone tell their story and it made a difference for you? And then there's the whole other realm for me as a storyteller and sort of a story coach, in a sense, or like I like to say, a soul story coach, is when I go back into my ancient tradition and I pull out wisdom stories from the ancient sources, like the story of Moses at the burning bush, or the story of the Jewish people crossing the sea. Many times I have led guided deep processes for those stories to help us. And so then this takes us into the power of story as metaphor, right? They are, they often say they're parables. And it's crazy powerful, because when you go into that realm, that subconscious realm, it speaks in images, metaphors, and stories. That is the language of our subconscious. And so all of my in-story work, we're always working on how to allow ourselves to receive this content in the form of images, metaphors, and stories, and then how to hear and receive their message and their guidance. It's a super interesting area to put more of our conscious attention on. So just think about this whole question of the power of stories. By what stories are you living your life? According to what story? Now, there are parts of our lives that we live according to the story that our families told us. And one of the things that's coming out really strongly in this interview series is the pattern, and it's not new, but it's very strong this time, is the pattern of how in our childhood, most of us acted and thought and created and behaved according to our authentic gifts, whether that was very intuitive or psychic or creative or, whatever it was. And then it got shut down because often it just happened that the adults in the world at that time around us, they did not understand it. And I just interviewed Brigittes from the InStory group, and she has an amazing story. And you'll hear her talk about how like until 11 she thought everybody saw people from the spirit world. She didn't think that was unusual until her family finally said, we don't see them. And it was like, oh, like we think that our creative genius is normal, and guess what? It is normal, and you get to have it back. And that is my passion, because in InStory, one of the things that happens is people bring it back and then bring it out in the world. And that process is so significant and important, and we are being called, like the world needs us. You matter. I was listening to a wonderful, wonderful Jewish leader, Rabbi Jonathan Sachs. He was the chief rabbi of Britain for like 20 years, and he is a very brilliant scholar in Jewish thought and in modern thought as well. And he speaks with such grace and wisdom, and he has a book called A Letter in the Scroll. And what that means is a single individual letter that in our Jewish tradition, the Torah, which is the Old Testament, the 5 books of Moses, is always handwritten on parchment. When we read it collectively in the synagogue, now there's many books also, but when it is read ritually in the synagogue, it is always read from a parchment that has been handwritten. And if even one letter is smeared or incorrect in some way, you can't read the scroll till it's repaired. It's not complete unless every letter is there. And what he's saying is that each one of us is a letter in that scroll. We're each significant, and we wouldn't have the whole without us, but we don't have meaning unless we're all together. Like, our meaning is derived as we are in our community. And it's such a beautiful idea. And he told a story about how a Muslim woman came up to him and said, "Thank you so much for your book, A Letter in the Scroll." And he was very moved by that because it's a very Jewish book, and just that it made a difference in her life as well. And I think that is so significant, the idea that each of us is unique. So why am I telling you that? Because your voice and your story matter, which is why I put all of you on my interview series who are in InStory, why I think it matters to push through our old fears of being seen and of do we really have any value, and who am I to say anything to anybody and all that. It's because intrinsically we have value. And part of it is reconnecting to that essence and developing the support to kind of rewire those old stories into truer stories. So part of that is having a community around you, and that's part of what's happening now, is that in my InStory group and in the whole InStory show that's coming up, which is a much bigger community, we are providing you all a place to have your voice valued so that you can begin to revalue and trust your essence, your authentic self. So I hope this helps you to pay a little bit of attention to, are you, um, is there a part of your story that you're still living by, an old story that isn't really supporting your life, and how can you let that one go and begin to attach yourself and connect yourself to the stories that you wish to live. So this is a whole area I'm thinking about. The InStory show is live. You can sign up. You can just go to instoryshow.com and sign up. If you're already signed up and it tells you you're already signed up, then you're already signed up and you'll get everything. So join us in the InStory show and share your story, okay? And as I always say, remember to go out in the world, share your story, live your purpose, and be a blessing. Bye, folks.